Welcome to the AI Brief from the YPO Technology Network. I'm Stephen Forte. We now know what supervision costs. On today's episode, one of the largest AI companies in the world spent this week doing three things that companies do not normally do out loud. It stopped its biggest planned training run. It said the safety rules it has used since 2023 no longer fit what it is now building. And then it published the computing cost of watching its own model. By the end of this episode, you will know what that number is, why it is a floor rather than a ceiling, and why it is almost certainly missing from your own budget. One piece of orientation first. All of this traces back to an OpenAI model getting out of its testing environment in July and reaching a public code sharing site. We covered that escape when it happened, and I am not going to relitigate it today. What arrived this week is not the incident, it is the invoice. Start with the pause. OpenAI stopped frontier reinforcement learning training for 2 weeks. Frontier just means the most capable systems a lab is building. Reinforcement learning is the training stage where a model gets rewarded for good answers and penalized for bad ones. And it is where most of the recent jump in capability came from. They halted it while they hardened and attacked their own testing environments, then restarted on the less capable systems only. Their own words are that the largest planned frontier run remains on hold. Sam Altman's public framing was that this is a good time to slow down. Companies do not usually announce that their biggest project is parked. Then there is the threshold. OpenAI says preliminary evidence suggests its forthcoming model, which it calls Astra, may reach what it labels the critical level for cybersecurity capability. Critical is the top rung of the company's own internal ladder. Notice the hedge, because the hedge is the interesting part. They did not say Astra is dangerous. They said the early evidence suggests it might clear the bar. And then they moved as though it already had. The consequence is worth holding on to. Crossing that line does not only mean more supervision during testing, it means supervision on every single run of that model for every user permanently. It is the difference between inspecting a factory before it opens and stationing an inspector on the line for the life of the plant. And then there is the number this episode is actually about. They published what that inspector costs. Current estimates put monitoring overhead at roughly 20% of the inference compute being monitored. They add that the cost varies substantially depending on the workload. Inference is the computing you pay for every time the model actually does something. Every question answered, every document drafted, every step an agent takes on your behalf. Not the training, the running. So for every 5 units of computing OpenAI spends running its model, it spends 1 more unit watching it. Yesterday on this show, it was an insurance broker publishing what AI saved it. Today, it is a lab publishing what watching it costs. Both numbers arrive the same way, which is that somebody chose to say them. Now, you might reasonably file this under laboratory problems. A frontier lab with an unusually capable model has unusually expensive obligations, and the model summarizing your contracts does not. That is fair, and it is mostly right about the reason. It is not right about the number. Here is why that 20% should travel. That is the price paid by the company that built the thing. OpenAI owns the model. It owns the training data and the hardware. It employs the researchers who designed the system, and it can see inside it at a level no customer will ever be offered. Every possible advantage that could make supervision cheaper, they have. 20% is the best case. Best information, best access, best people, most incentive to be efficient about it. Nobody buying AI from a vendor gets a better deal on watching it than the vendor gets on itself. So look at your own numbers. Most AI budgets I see have a line for licenses, often a line for the integration work, sometimes a line for training the team. Almost none of them have a line for watching. Picture Alto Verde, a 600-person specialty food exporter in Santiago, entirely invented, and you know several. Last quarter, Alto Verde put an agent on customer claims, which in that business means the disputes over a damaged pallet or a short shipment. The agent reads the claim, checks it against the shipping record, and drafts the response. It handles about 400 a month. It is genuinely good at it. The budget for that project had 3 items. There was the model itself, There was the integration work to connect it to the shipping system. There was a half day of training for the claims team. There was no fourth item. Nobody at Alto Verde is sampling those 400 responses. Nobody is checking whether the agent has quietly started settling claims that should have escalated. The finance director can tell you what that agent costs to run to the peso. Nobody in the building can tell you what it costs to know it still works. That is not negligence. Every business already understands this principle somewhere else. Nobody runs a cache till without a second person counting it, and nobody calls that counting a failure of the till. It is simply what it costs to trust the number. We just have not carried the habit across yet. Credit where it is due, because this is a harder thing to publish than it looks. OpenAI released a figure that makes its own economics look worse, and its own roadmap look slower. No regulator asked for it. There is no accounting standard with a line called computing. We spent supervising ourselves. They were not alone. Last Friday, Anthropic, the AI lab behind Claude, raised its own assessment of misalignment risk from very low to low. Misalignment is the risk that a model pursues something other than what its operator actually intended. Anthropic explained in the same paragraph that the increase reflected greater uncertainty rather than a new discovery. Two of the largest labs in the world in 1 week moved their own risk numbers in the direction that helps them least. Here's my read. For about 3 years, AI governance has been priced like a policy document, a committee, a framework, a slide with 3 pillars on it, and somebody's part-time responsibility bolted onto a real job. This week, it got repriced as infrastructure. 20% is not a compliance cost. It is a capacity number. It is the difference between an AI budget that survives its first serious deployment and one that quietly stops being true somewhere around month 4. There's a second signal here that I think matters more than the number. OpenAI stopped, not permanently and not dramatically, but there was a threshold. The evidence suggested it might have been crossed. And the response was to park the biggest thing in the building until they knew. Ask yourself what your equivalent is. Not the policy document, the threshold, the specific observable thing that would cause the AI project you are proudest of to be paused by somebody who does not need permission to do it. If the honest answer is that nothing would stop it short of a customer complaint or a headline, you do not have a governance framework. You have a hope. One more detail, small but telling. OpenAI also said the framework it has used to make exactly these judgments no longer fits the systems it is now building, and that it is rewriting it with outside participation. That framework dates from 2023. It lasted less than 3 years, written by the people with the most visibility into these systems that exists. Most of the AI policies I have read this year were written in the last 12 months by people with far less visibility than that. And nearly all of them are written as though they are finished. So here is the mirror. And it is one question in 2 halves. What percentage of your AI spend goes to watching your AI? And if the answer is 0, is that because somebody decided supervision was unnecessary or because nobody ever put it on the sheet? OpenAI can answer the first half to the decimal point. That is not because they are more careful than you are. It is because they were forced to find out and then chose to say it in public. The cost of running an AI is the number your vendor quotes you. The cost of trusting it is the one nobody has quoted you yet. That is the YPO Tech Network AI brief for Thursday, August 20th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, send it to a fellow member. I will be back tomorrow with more. Until then, stay sharp.